Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got the huge news surrounding the appointment of Paul Tisdale to cover, alongside a couple minor stories which have been circulating the internet. So join me, strap yourselves in, and brace for what is a day with news. I love that. News, actual news. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It'd be much appreciated. We're back in the studio tonight to record the Celtic the Thunder as well. So if you haven't already, please go over to the Celtic the Thunder Twitter account, leave us some questions for tonight's recording, and join the channel as well if you want to be part of the Thunder Club. Anyway, we actually have news to cover today, so we're going to get right into that. Celtic have officially announced the appointment of Paul Tisdale at the club. So we've got that statement to go over alongside some glowing reviews from manager Brendan Rodgers and senior officials at the club. Aye, we've finally put someone in that role. So today Celtic released a statement confirming the appointment of Paul Tisdale at Celtic Football Club, an appointment that we knew was coming after the articles from Stephen McGowan last week. There was a lot of speculation as to what capacity he would join the club and exactly what role he would join the club in, and today's statement clears all of that up. We have complete clarification on what his exact job title is at Celtic Football Club, what he'll be doing, and to be honest, it's one that I think shoots above and beyond my initial expectations of his appointment. Here was a statement from 2 o'clock this afternoon that Celtic Football Club is delighted to announce the appointment of Paul Tisdale as Celtic's head of football operations. In this new strategic role, reporting to the board, Paul will oversee the development and management of effective operations to support high-level football performance, including the identification and development of talent in line with the club's objective to develop Champions League players through our academy and recruitment processes. Additionally, Paul will work with the club's analytics functions, supporting colleagues across the club to continuously improve our processes. So, a mouthful of things, to say the least, in that opening couple of paragraphs of the statement. And as I said, I think that the job that he's been given Celtic really does shoot above all the expectations I had. There was talk of him just coming in originally on maybe some form of consultancy basis where he would help with maybe recruitment. Then there was talk of him being head of recruitment to replace the former Mark Lawwell and Joe Dudgeon in that department. But now we have kind of headed into a full-on director of football type appointment here. The head of football operations is Paul Tisdale, which seems a kind of even further step up from just head of recruitment. So a lot to unpack in this announcement. This is something that Celtic have had to do for years, not only the last year or two, not just since the departure of Mark Lawwell and Joe Dudgeon at the end of last season. This is something that I think is about a decade overdue for Celtic to catch up with the footballing landscape that we live in now, to catch up with Europe's top sides. We've lacked a real professional in that role. We've lacked someone who has delivered in that sort of role, and ultimately we've just not had that role at the club. We've had heads of recruitment or chief scouts or whatnot, but I don't think that we've done the right things or made the right appointments to keep up with these sides in Europe who we should ideally be competing with, and Celtic are finally now doing that, and I'm glad that they're doing that. And I want to just kind of revert back to a lot of what I said last week about Paul Tisdale. If you want to know more about him, check out my 2 videos that I made on him last week. There's a lot more in-depth coverage on him there about what he's done in the past or whatnot. This is the sort of role where whoever was going to be given it, from a fan perspective, I think that we need to just have faith. I don't think that you can exactly be thrilled or disappointed about the name who's taking up the role. As I said, there's very little, I said this last week, there's very little names in the world of football who would go into that role at Celtic Football Club that I'd be able to sit down and go, oh, that's a great appointment, because we don't really know the directors of footballs in this world. We don't really know the people in these head of football operations roles that are good or bad at them. You know, you get your Ralph Rangnicks, that's the guy that I brought up last week, for example. You get guys like him who has been very successful at clubs doing roles like that. And yeah, you'd be able to sit down and go, great appointment. But aside from guys like him, who we hear about quite frequently, you know, a lot of these guys go kind of through their careers with silent praise. You know, they aren't the guys that get the limelight or the credit for success. You know, we don't look down at Manchester City and credit the higher ups for what they're doing. We credit Pep Guardiola, and it's the same with, you know, clubs around Europe. So I'm glad that Celtic are finally taking this modern approach to hire someone in this role. It's something that we need to do, and I'm really encouraged by some of the terminology that was used in that sort of opening paragraph. So just to highlight it and reiterate, this role will help support football performance, including the identification and development of talent, and also with their objective to develop Champions League players through our academy and recruitment processes. He'll also help with the analytics functions of the club to improve the processes that are already underway. Now, a lot of this in the past has been buzzwords for Celtic. We've heard that we want to improve the academy development, that we want to improve our recruitment, and really we've never had evidence that that's actually going to happen. As I said, it's been treated like almost like a buzzword to keep us happy, that something's going to change, and then it doesn't actually happen. This time round, with such a big appointment, that's got to happen, and hopefully Paul Tisdale is the man to actually make that happen. Our academy process has fallen way short of the mark for the past 10 or so years. We have developed a handful of players who are good enough to play at Champions League level. Tierney, Callum McGregor. Actually, that might be about it in the past decade anyway. And that's really been a problem for Celtic, because that means that we've had to go into all these Champions League group campaigns with players like Stephen Welsh and Anthony Ralston under the squad registration rules, because that's really all we have that's good enough to make the mark. That needs to improve, and I hope that Paul Tisdale will really help with that. And also just our recruitment in general. I think that we've seen signs this summer that we're heading in the right direction with recruitment, that we have a little bit more ambition in our recruitment, and it's got better from our initial sort of judgments on the players that we signed this summer. But that was done unsupported by someone in this role. So now to have someone in this area of the club to help point Brendan Rodgers and the club in the right direction, you can only hope that things are going to get better. The problem is, in the past, these guys like Nick Hammond, these guys like Mark Lawwell, like Lee Congerton, they were meant to do the exact same thing and they fell short. A lot of it might have been down to the lack of backing. So Paul Tisdale needs to be backed, but ultimately he needs to have the right ideas. He needs to point us in the right direction, and it's a huge step up for him. You know, he's coming from a background of working with clubs like, you know, Exeter, where he was manager, but he went on to work at Fulham. He went to work on, I think it was Crystal Palace as well, another Premier League club, in consultancy roles. That's a huge step up, but this is an even bigger step up. We're now talking about a team that wants to challenge for league titles. We're talking about a team that wants to challenge at European level. Fulham and Crystal Palace haven't played in Europe for God knows how long. So this is a step up. It's going to be big for him. But by the sounds of it, the club feel like they've made the right appointment, and I'm encouraged from what I've read. Michael Nicholson said this in the club's statement today: "We are delighted to appoint Paul as head of football operations, and we're sure he will bring a new dimension to our work. Talent identification and talent development from our academy through to our first team is a fundamental importance to the club's strategy, and Paul has tremendous expertise in these areas. We are certain he will bring great experience, energy and innovation to what we do." And he'll work alongside Brendan and Chris McCart, head of our academy, to help further development and success to the club. Brendan Rodgers also gave a glowing review of Paul as well. In his words, he said that he's so pleased he's been able to bring Paul to the club with his important new role, and really excited to work with him. He is a hugely talented man who I know will make a real positive difference to us and give us a new edge. He knows modern football inside out. He understands what we need as a club, what our team needs to operate at a high level, and how we can develop positively and successfully across a number of functions within the club. So some very happy men, Brendan Rodgers and Michael Nicholson. You can go and read their quotes in full over on the club website in the statement. But Brendan Rodgers talking about how he's known him for quite some time, how he's really excited to work with him. I feel like that's always a huge positive about these sorts of appointments as well. You need to have a good working relationship to make things work right. And through this kind of introduction that they've had in recent months, I'm hoping that has really encouraged Brendan Rodgers into going, this is the guy for the job. Ultimately, I've not hidden my feelings towards the manager that we've got. You all know how much I love Brendan Rodgers. I think he's the best manager that Celtic could have. In this whole world, I think that Brendan Rodgers is genuinely the best manager that Celtic Football Club could have. And if he thinks this is the guy that he wants to work alongside him, and he's given it the green light, for me, that's a huge positive. That's the club heading in the right direction. So, we don't know how long it'll last. We don't know where it's going to go. I think that we will need to wait beyond January to finally see the results of it. This is going to be something that takes time and something that we need to be patient with. And that's one of the things that I want to really make clear in this video. I'm just going to be blunt about things. We need to be patient with this. And that's the thing. This isn't going to be an overnight success. This isn't going to be something that's by January and working to its maximum potential. This is something that's going to be a slow burner and that we need to trust with. Celtic are miles behind, years behind, when it comes to a lot of these processes that Paul Tisdale's coming in to improve. That's just fact. And you might not like to hear it, but it's true. And you hear Celtic fans saying how they want to be able to compete with teams like, you know, we think about Ajax and PSV, and you look at what they're doing for the league that they're in. You even go and look at the likes of a Copenhagen and Denmark and what they've managed to do. Teams like that across the continent. Celtic are years behind these sides, whether you like to admit it or not, they are. And a lot of that does come down to maybe the youth development and what we're doing there. A lot of it comes down to recruitment as well. Ultimately, these things are going to take time to fix and catch up with our sides. You know, it's not like a crop of youngsters are going to be turned into the next Lisbon Lions just because Paul Tisdale has been appointed in this role. This is going to take a couple of years to really get cooking in certain areas, but hopefully next summer we get a real taste of what he's been brought in to do with signings, and hopefully we just start to reap the rewards of it as time moves on. But we are going to have to be patient with it, and I urge you to be patient with it. So that's that with Paul Tisdale. Yeah, a real exciting appointment, I feel, and one that I'm looking forward to watch grow at the football club. So yeah, we'll see where it goes, but the statements and all of that are out. We'll probably hear Brendan Rodgers talk more about it on Friday as well at the press conference, but I'm really glad that Celtic have managed to get this appointment completed. Final bit of news for today. We're going to touch on this more in the Celtic the Thunder tonight, but Celtic are reportedly monitoring the situation with Kieran Tierney at Arsenal. That's something that's broke over the past 24 hours. I don't necessarily want to talk about this as much as some others because I've made my thoughts clear. It's that time of year, isn't it? It's international break season. But yeah, it looks as though he's set to leave Arsenal in January, and Celtic are reportedly monitoring that situation. But listen, that might be as far as it goes. I'm pretty certain that's as far as it will go. But as I said, tune into the podcast tomorrow and you can hear the debates between me, Kieran and Dylan on that situation. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. It is much appreciated. Please make sure to hit like and subscribe, especially that like button if you haven't, because it helps me a lot during phases like the international break. So yeah, until next time, take care of yourselves, God bless, and see you in the podcast tomorrow.